Was my first impression of Blanton's completely wrong? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So I'm very excited today because I get to do something that I've been waiting to do for quite a while, which is compare two different bottles of Blanton's side by side. So this Blanton's here on my right, your left, was the original Blanton's that I got probably about a year and a half ago now. It has notoriously been a difficult bottle for me to like, let's say that. It's done very poorly in blinds, even among other Buffalo Trace products and compared to other single barrel products that I have in my collection. It just really kind of tainted my picture of Blanton's in some ways. But the question has always been in the back of my mind, it's a single barrel. Does that mean I just got a bad single barrel and my whole opinion and view of Blanton's is skewed because of that? So enter in a brand new Christmas gift I got from my cousin. Shout out to him, by the way. Thank you for this. It's wonderful to have another Blanton's. New single barrel. This was actually picked by some people at his company, so hopefully they have similar palates to me, and I ultimately end up loving it because I would love to say that this has turned the script on Blanton's for me. So what we're gonna do is just sip through these both and really explore that single barrel effect. Did I have a stinker? This one has actually grown on me a little bit over time, so maybe my palate's become a little bit more attuned to it. But did I have one that's maybe a step below what it should be? Can this second one redeem it, or will Blanton's continue to be one that frustrates me? So without further ado, let's dive in. I would love to know, though, in the comments as we get into these two whiskeys, what has your experience been with Blanton's? Have you had a similar kind of thing where maybe one barrel that you got was not great and another was exceptional? Have they kind of all been middle of the road for you? I'm just curious and would love to start a conversation. All right, so my original Blanton's that I've tasted many a time and reviewed on the channel, let's see how it holds up today. So on the nose, it is actually pretty nice. Like an orange, like a creamsicle, orange and vanilla core to it. But there's also what I've kind of noted throughout my experience of this bottle, this woody quality, like a young wood, almost like a popsicle stick, like a younger, very grainy wood. It's not taking over the nose right now, and in the past I feel like it has maybe been a little bit woodier or mustier, but less so. But again, the image I have in my head is like one of those creamsicle lollipops. Like if you actually lick the popsicle stick along with that vanilla and that orange. All right, so that's the nose on the original. Let's go over to the nose on the new guy. Okay, so the first word that comes to mind is just darker. It is more cherry, like stewed cherry. Still has a similar DNA for sure. I think that orange citrus pop is there. Vanilla for sure. But there feels like a more balanced oak experience here. Barrel presence comes through and it's just darker and denser. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always better if you get a darker, denser experience, but it sometimes does speak to more barrel influence, more maturity. Okay, I think that these will continue to open up. The noses should blossom in some ways, but right off the bat, I do think this second one has a better nose. All right, let's go in on the palate. Cheers. Yeah, and that's where I struggle. The nose is fine, but the palate feels a little empty, a little flat, and it's got that musty wood note that's just, there's a slight off-putting note in this, and it comes through into the finish too. You still get the orange, you get the vanilla, maybe even a little cherry, but that off-putting slight musty wood experience It's more musty on the palate for me, and it always comes through. Like, it always just kind of knocks it down. Like, everything else about it could be enjoyable if it didn't have that one note, although I do wish it was a little bit more robust and not as flat. Still, not as bad as when I originally opened it up and tasted it and thought to myself, this is the standard, this is the most well sought after bourbon in the world. Not really living up to that. So it's improved over time, but I still struggle with it. Let me get some water, then we'll dive into the palate on this second bottle of Blanton's and see how that one compares. Okay, let's dive into glass 2 here, our second bottle of Blanton's. Cheers. Okay, good. Way more barrel influence, a little bit spicier, richer oak, cherry, and vanilla. It is still lower proof. It is still not super robust. This one feels a little less thin on the palate, which is good. But I don't know if Blanton's is ever going to come across as super robust to me. I think it's designed to be more of an easy sipper, and this fits the bill. It's arguably less complex because it doesn't have those like off-putting notes, but it's just way more enjoyable all the way through. Feels more mature, feels more rounded, and it definitely does not have that off-putting note. Yeah, and it leans more into its cherry richness than all just the light, bright notes of the first one that I had. All right, I think that is relatively compelling. I'm just gonna go through and do a little bit of comparing back and forth and dig into these. I'll kind of fast forward through all that for you guys so that it's not a super long video. I'll come back and recap it and make a final conclusion here. All right, that actually did not take that long. I went back in the opposite order, did a little comparing, and just took a little extra second, but it was pretty conclusive. The answer is clear for me. This second bottle is much, much better. First bottle, I don't know if this is a somewhat typical profile for Blanton's and I'm just not into it, and then the variation is allowing this one to shine through. My suspicion, my more likely conclusion is that bottle 2 here is a better representation of a very solid Blanton's product, and my first bottle, unfortunately, is just kind of a stinker with, it was really dramatic coming off of this one with the richer cherry, oak, and just smoother experience. Again, not like super elevated and not stellar in the way that some of the bourbons that you'll, experience across the whole year could be, but very, very good. And then you come to glass A, this first bottle here, and it was just so stark how much that wood, funk, youthful, whatever it is note came through. So I'm glad to say Blanton's has redeemed itself just a little bit in my eyes. The biggest question I have been asking myself, besides which one's better here, is either one of these worth $100, $120, worth all the hype that goes into Blanton's as an experience? I don't know about that. I think this second one is probably worth the $70 or $75 MSRP for sure. Beautiful presentation and very good whiskey, but pretty simple. Easy sipping. This first one is not really worth even $40, $50, just because it is that more off-putting profile for me. Could just be my palate, so your results may vary. But again, I'd love to know in the comments below, have you had this kind of experience with Blanton's where one was pretty lackluster and then other bottles were better? Has your typical Blanton's experience been solid, above average or maybe below average? Would love to know that as well. Fascinating. Really glad I got to do this. Thanks again to my cousin for the wonderful gift, and it's definitely a good bottle of Blanton's. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Pretty conclusive here today. The single barrel effect is real here, and just look out for that as you start to hunt and maybe collect some Blanton's bottles. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, maybe try a second version of that single barrel that you're not sure about, and cheers.